What's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Toast, and we have a couple major stories today for Nintendo. Apparently, not only do they have a Switch 2 Direct next week, which of course we're all extremely excited about. I'm ready to get my pre-order in right now, but even more information has come in that they have a bit of a surprise this week as well. Now, that's not all, though, because we also got information about the Switch 2 and how Nintendo plans to release its games throughout 2025. This actually sounds pretty interesting and, in my opinion, pretty exciting as well. Then on top of that, we also got news that companies are afraid of the biggest game release for the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5 thus far this generation. This is definitely going to be big for the console makers, but there are some companies that are afraid of this release, so we will get into all of that as well. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do. I really do appreciate every single one of you. Let's just go and get right into things, though, starting off with what appears to be a breakout new IP, especially if it can live up to its hype. Now, that is still a very big if in this situation, but I'm talking about Inzoi, which clearly takes inspiration from the Sims series. Its ambition, however, seems to far out exceed what EA has done for the Sims franchise in a very, very long time. So Sims fans are just kind of looking at this game and they are salivating over what Inzoi could potentially be. And the statistics back that up. Just ahead of its March 28th release, it's now officially the most wishlisted game on Steam, which is extremely impressive for a brand new IP. I mean, just to kind of put that into perspective, it's ahead of Hollow Knight Silksong, Valve's new multiplayer game Deadlock, Elden Ring, Night Rain, and even Borderlands 4. So this is, quite the achievement here, which I think kind of speaks to EA's inability to be more ambitious themselves. I mean, we'll see what happens here in the coming days, though, and whether or not Inzoi can actually live up to its potential. Oh, and Killzone got name dropped today, which, always brings my heart joy. This is a very nostalgic series for me, as it's really one of the most iconic games for the PlayStation 3. But that's also kind of the thing here, because it really hasn't had much life outside of the PlayStation 3. Now, they released Shadowfall for the PlayStation 4, but, I mean, it didn't really live up to the previous games in terms of quality, and that's pretty much all she wrote. Much of that original trilogy is still locked away on the PlayStation 3, as is a lot of PS3 exclusives, unfortunately. But now, interestingly, the Killzone composer has chimed in, and he said that he believes that a remaster trilogy would have success if Sony were to port them to modern consoles. Now, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I do like the Killzone series. I have a lot of fond memories of those games, so I'm inclined to agree with him here. But I want to take this a step further, because I feel like Sony should take notes from Xbox and put together a true backwards compatible team specifically for PlayStation 3 games. I mean, they don't have to be backwards compatible, but, they could start remastering those PS3 games. I mean, I love the Killzone series, but like I said before, there's just so many games that are locked away on that platform. And I think there's a lot of easy money just sitting there on the table for them if they were to actually bring these type of games to the PlayStation 5 in some shape or form. I mean, they could remaster the Killzone trilogy, the Resistance games. There's Mon Nation Racers, Little Big Planet 1 and 2, and the list just kind of goes on and on and on. I think a lot of fans would buy into those type of games if they were to do them. So I just hope that Sony eventually gives the PS3 the love and care that it truly deserves. Now, we also got a small update for Hollow Knight Silksong, and, even though I say that it's a small update, that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. By this point, anytime we get any kind of news for Silksong, people take that as big news, and you can just kind of go and queue up the endless amount of speculation online. Now, there might be a legitimate reason this time, because eventually we're going to get this right. But nonetheless, what's happening here is that it received various updates on Steam database. First here is that the game's copyright has been updated from 2019 to 2025. It's also been added as an eligible NVIDIA GeForce Now game, and then there's also been some updates for its assets as well. So there's definitely some legitimate movement for it on Steam behind the scenes, and that has led to the idea that an announcement could soon follow. Now, if that part is true, Well, we do have the Switch 2 Direct next week, and then there's also a rumor going around that a Switch 1 Direct will happen this Thursday. So maybe we'll finally get that Silksong update as early as this week. Now, I'm not going to necessarily hold my breath because we've been burnt on this so many times already, but I'm definitely crossing my fingers. Now, that does lead us into our next topic, though, and that's all about those 2 Directs. Now, let's just go and kind of talk about the Switch 1 Direct first. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but in case you missed that video, various insiders, including Andy Robinson from VGC and a credible Chinese leaker that leaked the entirety of one of last year's Nintendo Directs, teased that they had heard about a Switch 1 Direct this week. Well, we can now also add Nate the Hate to that list. You can see here where he said, "To stop the constant questions, yes, I've heard there is a Nintendo presentation this week. I believe it is on around Thursday, and it'll be a Direct, but I'm not 100% certain on the format at present." So the first thing to kind of keep in mind here is that if this rumor pans out, and there is an if, but if it does, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a big general Direct. It could be a partner showcase, or it could also even be an Indie World showcase. So I'd say just kind of temper your expectations until we get official word from Nintendo themselves. Now, the idea that they could have a somewhat big Direct, though, I don't think is completely crazy. I mean, yes, it might be surprising with the Switch 2 Direct right around the corner. I mean, this does kind of come off as last minute for Nintendo. But the fact remains that we have zero information about the Switch 1 and what games they have planned for it this year in 2025. I mean, unless we believe that they have just absolutely nothing else planned for the Switch 1 for the rest of this year, which I think is highly unlikely, then, I mean, I could definitely see them doing a Direct for it this week to reveal some of those games and just kind of get it out of the way. That way they can keep the focus of next week's Switch 2 Direct on the Switch 2 specifically. So I think that could be the mindset here that Nintendo has. Now, as for the Switch 2, though, this is where things start to get really exciting. I know we're all anticipating next week's Direct where we'll finally get some information, but we now have a leak from a credible outlet, and let's just kind of check this out. So this comes from Insider Gaming, and let's read what they said here. With Nintendo Switch 2 just 1 week from its official full reveal, this year's annual GDC was buzzing with talk around the future of the console. One such discussion was around the Nintendo Switch 2 launch date, which according to people that I spoke to at the event, falls in June. But that's not all. According to various sources, the Nintendo Switch 2 will launch its games in a 3-phase strategy, starting with primarily first-party games on launch. According to sources, the second stage will arrive in October-November for third-party studios, most of which are expecting the dev kits for the Switch 2 to be sent in June. Finally, it was said that the third phase for games will be in the holiday period. Now, the first thing that might come off as a little bit bizarre for some people is that dev kits apparently won't be sent out to third-party studios until basically its release in what seems to be June. Now, that could cause a slow pipeline for third-party studios that are impacted by that decision. But I'll also say that is the important part to keep in mind here. We don't really know which studios were impacted. I mean, we do have reason to believe that some third-party studios do already have games in development for the Switch 2. I'm going to go ahead and point to Playtonic as one such example. They've gone to great length to confirm a Switch 2 release for Yooka-Rap Lately. Now, we've also seen Nintendo's infographic for their Switch 2 partners, which includes Microsoft, Capcom, Sega, Square Enix. The list just kind of goes on and on and on. So with that in mind, there it does seem to be a good chance here that a lot of the key publishers already have the information or the dev kits that they need for Switch 2 development. For me, though, I really say the exciting part about this leak is that it sounds like Nintendo will have an abundance of first-party games for its launch window. I mean, that's why most people buy into Nintendo consoles in the first place, to play Nintendo-developed games. And this leak basically points to them unloading pretty much immediately. Now, we don't know what those games necessarily are, but it could be Mario Kart 9, there's Metroid Prime 4, there's a lot of speculation that it will be a cross-generation release. There's been rumors of a new Donkey Kong game, and history also tells us that Nintendo likes to have a new 3D Mario relatively early in the generation. So we really could see some big games come from them right out of the gate, and I do actually like this plan. I think most gamers are probably going to be focused on those first-party games in the first place, and that might not necessarily be good for third parties, so I think they can easily come out later this year and just kind of continue the Switch 2 momentum forward. Let me know what you all think about all this, though. Do you like this idea to mainly prioritize first-party games at launch, or was you hoping to see a large quantity of third-party games at launch as well? Okay, now one last thing before we go, there's one game that's just kind of looming over every other game in the year of 2025, and of course, that's Grand Theft Auto 6. I mean, if you haven't noticed, there's not really a lot of confirmed release dates for the second half of the year, and that's not just because publishers don't have games to release, but rather it's because they're intimidated by GTA 6. Now, this comes from Christopher Dring, which reported that 3 major video game publishers have told the game business that they are ready to delay their games to avoid Grand Theft Auto 6. One publisher said that Rockstar Games always suck a lot of money, and more importantly, time out of the market. We don't want to be anywhere near that. We are working up multiple different plans for our titles. Now, there were also other publishers that echoed that sentiment, including EA, which hinted that they might push the next Battlefield back due to launch timing and some unnamed things that are happening. Now, I think we all kind of know what they're referring to, and yeah, that's GTA 6. And the reason I bring all of this up in the first place is because this tells us really 2 different things. One is that this further cements the idea that GTA 6 will be a record-breaking release, and much of the game industry feels the exact same way. It's going to be so big that other developers are flat out dictating their release schedule to avoid it. Now, that's going to be great for console makers because this is an opportunity for them to push out a lot of units over the holiday period. There's been a big discussion this generation about consoles stagnating, but GTA 6 can kind of help them propel forward. So there is that. But it also tells me that the holiday period this year will be slower than usual in terms of AAA releases. Now, that could also mean that early 2026 could potentially be just loaded with AAA games, but we might not get a lot of big releases this holiday because of GTA 6. I just kind of wonder how companies are going to navigate their announcement plans, because companies typically like to build up hype for months before their AAA releases. I mean, if you look at Xbox as one such example, they're expected to have their usual summer showcase. But if GTA 6 still doesn't have a confirmed release date by that time, I almost wonder how Xbox and their partners will navigate that showcase and how they're going to announce those release dates. So yeah, GTA 6 is definitely looming largely, it seems, and it's impacting a lot of the game industry, how games are announced this year and just how they're released in general. It's just dictating entire publishers by this point, which is really crazy to think about. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.